There's a new grocery store that's opened in Regina, and it sells organic food and Saskatchewan-grown products. It's owned and operated by Rick Morrell. Now, he's been a paid activist on environmental issues for a number of years. Now he's made a career change. So let's meet Rick Morrell, business owner.
When I made the decision to do this, I went through 2 months of just inside me, just wrenching, trying to reconcile this shift.
Talking to customers about special diets and allergies is new for Rick Morrell.
Did you get that from him too?
I got these from,
Morrell used to be with the Saskatchewan Waste Reduction Council. He helped set up recycling and composting programs. He also wrote educational materials and organized conferences and trade shows on environmental issues.
I would give recommendations to people, would actually save them money. They were feasible in terms of how much work it would take off, and it wouldn't be any more work than what they were already doing. And 9 times out of 10, it wouldn't get implemented. And that was really frustrating. I couldn't understand it. So, I opened my own store and I just do it.
He decided to get into business for himself after government funding cuts eliminated his job with the Waste Reduction Council. He graduated in June from a course on self-employment at SciAst.
The things that I think have been most useful for me were the bookkeeping training, the accounting training. It's definitely made it easier to track expenses and to keep track of where I am financially, and sleep much better at night. 8:39.
He has competitive prices by keeping his operating costs low and by dealing with local producers. About 1/4 to 1/3 of his products come from Saskatchewan. For example, there are vegetables from Lipton, organic peas from Capel, and bulgur from Regina. Not far from downtown, in a residential area, Morrell bought an old confectionery. He still has his viewpoints and principles that he developed while he was an activist, but he's also a pragmatic business person.
There was an existing clientele for the store, and they had certain products that they came here to get, and so I've maintained those products as well.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
This health food store also carries things that are not usually considered, well, healthy.
With the pop and with the chocolate bars specifically, there's a lot of people come in here to get that. And for me to say they don't exist here anymore would be like saying you don't belong here anymore.
Yet alongside the cans of pop are fruit juice spritzers, and next to the gum and candies, seeds, nuts, and granola.
Continue to carry the products that people are used to, but putting beside them products that I consider to be from better sources, both in terms of nutrition and also in terms of how they were produced.
Rick's experience as a small business owner has changed his view of business, but he knows some people still generalize and think all business people are concerned only with making money.
I'd go and play pool with somebody, or I'd be sitting around having coffee or whatever, and they'd be making these slags about business, and I'd be thinking, hey man, I'm a businessman now. I mean, I know you're not talking about me, but come on, not all businesses are bad.
By offering some products carried in regular supermarkets, Rick realizes a few people on the extreme may think he's selling out. He sees it as being pragmatic.
As an activist, I always said that I don't want to deal only with the converted. I'm not into elitism. I want everyone to be comfortable in my store. I want everyone coming into my store. And then I'm going to give them a sample of this and a taste of that and a hint about this and a hint about that. And if they keep on buying the stuff that they've always been buying, that's their choice, and I'm not going to judge them for it.
Rick says he's still getting out his messages of eat healthy and protect the environment. It's just that now he's using a different method than speeches and trade shows.
The package here is in my mind, the most radical activism I've done. And I don't mean radical in the sense of, people have to be weirded out by it. I mean, it's a powerful thing. It's exciting, and I think when other activists see how this works and feel the atmosphere in here, and that this isn't about money, this is about making some things happen, then there's no reason to think that business means selling out.
Morrell says he wants to gradually replace his non-Saskatchewan products with locally grown goods. The Saskatchewan wheat pool made about $50 million last year, and the cost to farmers of growing a crop helped that profit grow. The pool says it made about $66 million from the sale of fertilizer, seed, and chemicals, an increase of almost 300% over last year.
Our margins were not excessive. They were reasonable. They are in line with our historic margins. So it's really the stronger demand that's produced the stronger earnings.
The pool put shares on the Toronto Stock Exchange last April, a move that cost about $10 million. When organizations get rid of people, the job of delivering the bad news often falls to the people in the communications department. It's up to them to tell the employees, shareholders, and the media what's going on. Members of the International Association of Business Communicators wrapped up their national convention in Regina today with a luncheon speech by Diane Francis, the editor of the Financial Post. She says sometimes getting out the news of layoffs isn't done very well.
The worst example recently is the CBC announced layoffs. I cannot believe a company which calls itself a communications company would tell its employees that some bunch of you are going to be laid off, but we can't say who or when. Talk about creating stress, anxiety, heartache. I think it's immoral.
Francis says when some organizations lay off people, they do it quickly and clearly. And that wraps up Business Matters for this week.
Okay, and no further comment. Let's carry right on. Thanks, see you again next week. Coming up next, Charlie Parmer's Shady Past on Prairie Portraits.
Let's enjoy it while we can. Let's enjoy it while we can. Won't you help me sing my song? Help me sing my song. When your lovers once again take the bright side of the road.
Introducing the all-new Toyota Camry. Take the bright side of the road.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
To me, fall means great colors and great savings. All Canadian Tire's great fall sale.
I got these Bosch Platinum spark plugs, only $6.49 a pair.
Right now, I can save 20% on selected Motomaster tune-up parts.
I don't care if the seasons change, just as long as Canadian Tire doesn't.
Everyday low prices, that's good.
Everyday low prices plus Canadian Tire's great fall sale, that's better.
Canadian Tire. Everyday low prices made better.
Without the help of the Missing Children Society, I may never have found them. It's a wonderful organization which provides a much-needed service. They gave me so much hope and moral support throughout the whole ordeal.
The Missing Children Society of Canada is a non-profit organization which provides free of charge a unique and comprehensive search program. Call 1-800-661-6160.
I'll never forget the efforts made by the Missing Children Society. It's so good to be able to hug them again.
Wake up to the morning edition, weekdays on CBC Radio.
Any thoughts? Give us a call on Talkback. It's radio to call your own. Radio worth listening to.
The morning edition, weekdays on CBC Radio.
Tuberculosis. In the early part of the century, it was the #1 killer in the world. The only chance for recovery was rest. For many Saskatchewan people, their single beacon of hope was Fort Sam. Watch Chasing the Cure, Saturday at 7 on CBC.
Feel the passion, experience the excitement as the Saskatoon Symphony presents its 1996-97 season. And this year, artistic director Dennis Simons has prepared an exceptional program. From a child's first concert experience to performances of the world's most challenging masterpieces, there's something for everyone at the Symphony. September 29th, it's music for a Sunday afternoon at the Delta Bessborough. Enjoy the works of Ravel, Beethoven, and Gabriel Pierney. Feel the passion. Come, experience the Symphony.
It's a long way from riding with Jesse James to busting sod in Saskatchewan, but that's what a lot of people believe is the background of one old-timer who used to farm near Dundurn. Jeff Bohatch has his story on tonight's Prairie Portrait.
It's now the middle of Highway 11 near Dundurn, one of Saskatchewan's busiest roads. But 90 years ago, it was home to a man who just wanted to be left alone, a man who may have had something to hide.
Who knows? Who knows what he's done?
Most of those here say that they had ridden with the Jesse James gang.
His name was Charlie Parmer. He was born in 1839 in Brookville, Ohio. As a young man, he and his brother Alan fought for the South in the American Civil War. They were members of Quantrill's Raiders, a band of men known for ruthless guerrilla warfare. The not yet famous outlaws, Frank and Jesse James, also fought with Quantrill. This is where the Parmers first met Jesse James.
His brother Alan married Jesse James's sister, and that seems to be fairly well documented, and that's one of the facts. And
after the war, Jesse James and a gang of outlaws began robbing banks and trains. Within a few years, they became the most infamous criminals in America. In 1876, the James brothers and their partners botched a bank holdup in Northfield, Minnesota. Gang members were captured or killed, or went into hiding. Frank and Jesse James headed for the Dakotas. In 1905, Charlie Parmer, now 66 years old, settled near Dundurn with his son, Earl. They lived in a sod house and raised horses and cattle. Dundurn resident John Bethune worked for the Parmers.
Well, they come up here and they want to be left alone. You know, they were set out by themselves on that land, and they stayed there. They come to town, get the grocery and the mail, and go home.
On those trips to town, Charlie Parmer wore a six-shooter on his hip, and it was common knowledge that he kept one under his pillow.
They always had a gun around handy. Nobody sneaked up on them guys.
oh, there was lots of good stories. One that I can recall was that there was some noise outside the door one evening, and they said, come in several times, and nobody came in. And so they fired through the door, and next morning they went out, and there was a dead pig laying there.
One of those six-shooters had 5 notches in the handle.
Nobody knows what it shot, whether it five gophers or whatever, but I guess at the time, a notch meant that you killed a man.
Charlie Parmer told people that before he came to Dundurn, he worked for Buffalo Bill Cody. Rumor had it that he gunned down 2 cattle rustlers while riding fence for Buffalo Bill, and that he took a bullet in the leg during the fight. There was also talk that Parmer rode with Jesse James and had the gold to prove it.
Well, the stories always were there was quite a bit of money buried out close to his soddy, because he did ride with the Jesse James gang.
Parmer admitted to knowing Jesse James, but that's all he'd say. He died at the age of 96. His son and a neighbor buried him on Christmas Day, 1935, in an unmarked grave.
No, there was no funeral service or nothing.
Why not?
Well, Earl said the old man lived all his life without a minister. He said he could die without one. That was it.
Today, Parmer's grave is still unmarked. Some local people would like to give him one and keep the stories of Dundurn's outlaw alive, whether they're true or not.
It's quite interesting, even if he wasn't. He was a pioneer here. He contributed somewhat to the opening of the West.
It's ironic that the man who didn't want any attention is now getting it, that his sanctuary is now a well-traveled highway, but the truth is buried with him in this unmarked patch of prairie. For CBC NewsHour, I'm Jeff Bohatch.
I do want to believe that he hung out with Jesse James.
Me too. It's a neat bit of Saskatchewan history that I didn't learn in school.
Nope.
I like it. Okay, well, we're going to move on to sports now. And Glenn, and the latest from the Expos.
Yeah, the Expos are treating every game.